I'm sorry, may consider requesting the concerned parties to continue the dialogue before the decision. And then I'm wondering what's the meaning of the requesting dialogue. I believe it should not intervene in the World Heritage Committee's decision-making process. World Heritage Committee is the only decision maker, and if contestation is binding the World Heritage Committee's decision only to request the dialogue, there's the complete change of operational guideline, and even the Heritage Convention, because the Heritage Convention mandates the World Heritage Committee to consider only outstanding universal value, not other things. Then if we allow the World Heritage Committee limit the World Heritage Committee's decision only to requesting dialogue, if there's no agreement, it's like the contestation will make the change the decision making process. I think that's not what the World Heritage Convention is meant to, and it'll restrict the autonomous decision making process of World Heritage Committee, and I think I'd like emphasize that the contestation is not always legitimate. So we have to keep that in mind. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I now give the floor to Barbados.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And given that this is the first time I take the floor on this occasion, I thank you for the opportunity to reflect in greater depth on some of the issues that have been raised. I think one important statement that was made earlier this morning was that we had committed, as I think it was Australia, that we had committed to the crafting of guiding principles, which in the end will probably result in procedural changes, but we agreed we would stick to the guiding principles. And that's what we're reflecting on here, even though we anticipate that the procedural will come as a result. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I think that the change here, as was indicated, I am much happier, I think, with the up to committee, very, very much. But in case there is no agreement, the committee requests, unless otherwise decided. I have to say that I prefer the formulation that was just offered by the Republic of Korea. May consider requesting the concerned state parties to continue their dialogue before taking a decision on the nomination file. I think that this is a better formulation because it considers that there are various options involved and does not prescribe formally how they will be proceeded upon. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbados. I have a request from Germany. It's not Germany, online Germany.
So, yeah,
yes, you are from, Madam.
Oui. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you for giving me the floor. And it's also the first time that I can express myself this morning. So I would like to really thank you for your efficiency and for the way you're actually managing this working group. So as for the last amendment by Japan, we have a few apprehensions here, because it could really also introduce a way to interrupt the dialogue before even a consensus is reached by the different state parties concerned. So we would rather actually cross off this last amendment.
Decided by the committee. Le dernier amendement, on préfère de le biffer. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Je vous remercie, madame. Et je vous
Thank
donne la
you.
parole.
And I'm now giving the floor to Ethiopia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we are almost there. I believe that the first part doesn't pose any problem. We are, I think, now stuck on the second part and regarding the dialogue between the submitting and the contesting party and how we articulate that dialogue. In the spirit of consensus, I would suggest that in case there is an otherwise decided by the committee, this has no problem for me because the committee is sovereign. It can decide in any way it wants, and that's what it states. So the committee can decide one way or the other. That's what it's saying here. So it doesn't engage anything. Now, where the problem is, of course, is our Japanese friends are saying that they want the request. They want to request, the committee should request the concerned parties to continue the dialogue, whereas I think the Republic of Korea is saying may consider requesting. So this is where the substantive difference lies. If it is acceptable, maybe as a compromise, we can say the committee should consider requesting. It could be a bridge between the two if it's acceptable. The committee should consider, because as was stated just now by Germany, we are for dialogue, and dialogue should be the essence of what we do here. And so if it's acceptable to both Japan and Korea, maybe we can say the committee should consider requesting the concerned states parties to continue the dialogue. And then the rest, I think, is okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ambassador. I now give the floor to Uganda, to be followed by Mauritania. Uganda, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. This is also my first time to take the floor. I want to thank you and congratulate you upon this very able way you are leading the process. And as members have already observed, I think we are proceeding well. And so far, some of the other issues, maybe they are acceptable, especially where the committee is concerned. Madam Chair, I think Colombia, the honorable delegate from Colombia has introduced a very good aspect that whatever we are doing should not be in exclusion of the earlier decided guidelines. What we have here now, we are on guideline 10, but there are other guidelines preceding this. So I think it's important we keep checking as we make a decision to ensure that we don't contradict the guidelines that we have earlier passed. Because some of these issues is extending because it might already be covered or it might be able to relate to another. For example, in relation to the paragraphs 3 and 4, which our delegate from Colombia has brought, I also noticed there is a paragraph 6. Paragraph 6, which talks about the text documenting reconciliation process. So when contestation is coming, it seems there is maybe some issue where there are certain things which are not resolved. So Madam Chairperson, I would propose that in addition to paragraphs 3 and 6 and 4, we also add paragraph 6 that any matter that has not been covered or resolved in paragraphs 3, 4, and 6 in the guiding principles, then maybe we can go to the issue of addressing the contestation as the other members have already proposed. So I think, I mean, I don't know whether it makes the point, but paragraph 6 already talks about reconciliation process, which will be well documented. Right. Yeah.
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I'm being told that this is renumber. It's now 7, but don't worry about the numbers. We know which one you're talking about. Once the whole text is formatted and we know the number of each paragraph, we will know exactly which ones. But I think this is a good addition. if the room agrees, of course. It is important in this process that was proposed for this mechanism by South Africa that we link very tightly to the guiding principles that elaborate on how this dialogue should start much earlier. I have now on my list Mauritania, to be followed by Belgium.
No, that is Uganda, not South Africa.
No, I know that it is South Africa, but I was talking Uganda. I was talking about the amendment as proposed by South Africa. The previous amendment, not yours. Yours is absolutely Uganda.
Oui, merci, Madame la Présidente. La
Thank you, Chair. Mauritania supports South Africa's proposal. However, we would like to raise the issue of the World Heritage Center facilitating dialogue among concerned states parties. Perhaps the term dialogue here could be replaced by a discussion between concerned member states. Because afterwards, we state that in case there is no agreement, the committee has the right to decide on these issues. I'm not sure I've understood your amendment, says the chairperson. You would like to replace dialogue by discussion. Yes, indeed, because ultimately it's the committee that will decide on these files. So a discussion leaves it open.
Proposal to replace the word dialogue by discussions, and I would want those who are going to speak now to say whether this is okay with you or not. I give now the floor to Belgium, to be followed by Serbia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So far, we have been a silent witness of these proceedings, and we've seen them move in the right direction. It's a bit difficult to keep track of what exactly is on table right now, but I believe we like the paragraph with the amendments by Colombia, Uganda, and the version in the second part of the text proposed by Republic of Korea, where it says may consider requesting or may decide. We also believe that dialogue is a lot more constructive and a lot more clear than the more general and vague term discussion in this regard. However, and of course, I'm always happy to see Mr. Villapando arriving, and I have a question actually for either Secretariat or the legal advisor. It's been explained before that if we say may decide or may consider, we remain well within the mandate of this working group. I'm not sure, and I thank the ambassador of Ethiopia for his amendment. I'm not sure whether the same can be said of the word should, because it seems more like a directive for the committee in that regard. So could this be clarified, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Belgium. I have asked our legal advisor to join us. He has been on call and listening all morning. And for me, it is important that whatever we present to the committee, and I'm in your hands to present whatever you want as a consensus text to the committee, but my only red line is that it has to be legal and it has to be in conformity with the convention. And of course, where this issue is sensitive and where we really need his insight is basically on this paragraph, especially the second part. I will now give the floor to Serbia and Japan, and then we'll discuss with him all the options that are now for the second part of the paragraph, and make sure that what the way we go forward is the way that is in conformity with the convention. I have Serbia, Japan, and Turkey. Yes, and then I will give the floor to the legal advisor because we're running out of time. And I would like you to really stick to the 2 minutes maximum. Serbia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. We support the insistence on dialogue. So in that sense, I have just one question before what happens if theoretically, because we discussed that in advance, nominating states will have the obligation to consult stakeholders, and then the advisory bodies will review the nomination based on that. But what happens theoretically if neither the nominating state nor the advisory body recognize somebody as a concerned party, and that party realizes just 6 weeks before the committee that it is a concerned party? So what are the delays here if it happens theoretically? So this we might question. It's very unlikely that it might happen, but theoretically it could. And the other thing is, as I said before, we support dialogue, and in that sense, we would support this formulation of requesting dialogue. Maybe we might go with a consensus proposing urging dialogue or something like that, but we do support this importance of dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. To answer your question very quickly, what would happen in the case you have just stated is that the state party will contest within these 6 weeks. We'll only have these 6 weeks to contest and then have dialogue. And then we fall into the second part of the paragraph where the committee decides on the way forward. Yes, please.
And just that, so it will mean that this party that could contest would have 6 weeks to prepare the contestation, because contestation has to be prepared as well, and it has to be prepared well to start a dialogue and to preferably reach the conclusion, which gives us very, very small amount of time. So this is why dialogue is very important, and to try to encourage dialogue rather than just giving a possibility to avoid dialogue. So I think it's important that we reach consensus in one way or another, how to encourage dialogue, all of us. I think we agree on that. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Madam. I now give the floor to Japan, to be followed by Turkey.
Thank you very much. And if I think it's really the moment for me to be very honest. Once again, this is absolutely the biggest issue from our perspective, as we are all aware, and we have not much room to compromise on this particular. Only on this point, we have not much room to compromise. Now, what we are saying, essentially, there is no question about the infringement of the function of the committee, because we say, unless otherwise decided by the committee can make different decisions. The difference is this: requests in our formulation, what we are saying is dialogue is the basic principle. Then the committee can make other decisions. That is the difference. There's no question of our formulation harming the prerogative of the committee. The committee can make decisions, but the dialogue is the principle. That's what this is all about. In the Korean formulation, it can go either way. Or dialogue, maybe not dialogue, it doesn't matter. So that gives an impression that dialogue is not important. And particularly, we have 6 weeks for dialogue under the new system. And then in that case in particular, we have to agree. Many delegations before said that dialogue is very important. Why don't we have it in the formulation? This is a very, very important point. And secondly, I appreciate the efforts of the ambassador of Ethiopia, but my problem is if we are caught up with the arguments about whether we should have should or may, then we might lose sight of what is important. So if the legal advisor is saying that the should is a possibility, we can probably look at that. But here, what is most important is we shouldn't be caught up with the arguments whether we should go for may or we should for should. That shouldn't be the case. The question here, whether it is the dialogue which is very important or not. That's all. So I don't think we have much flexibility on this particular point. All the other things we are flexible, but not this one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I give now the floor to Turkey, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry for taking the floor again. First, I would like to echo what our colleague from the delegation of Serbia said. 6 weeks time is not quite enough to prepare a contestation, especially with regard to some serious and sensitive political issues. So I think we have a proposal, but I will not mention that right now because it requires operational guidelines amendment of the operational guidelines. But I have a question for the Secretariat. With the current operational guidelines, even we agree on these guiding principles, can a state party nominate a site as a site of memory? Because there is no mention of sites of memories in the operational guidelines right now. So how can a state party can submit a nomination of a site of memory when you don't have anything about sites of memory in the operational guideline? And how can we implement these guiding principles? Is there any way? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to see you chairing this meeting, and it's a pleasure to see in presentia so many members of this working group. Madam Chair, indeed, I have been trying to follow, and you were kind enough to share with me the text of what had been discussed up to now by the working group, and I have done my best to follow your proceedings this morning. I should, of course, point out from the start that I haven't had the opportunity to follow the entire proceedings of your working group. I'm not necessarily familiar with the subtleties and matters that have been discussed in the past, but I will do my best to assist the working group in that regard. The first thing to recall is the actual, I'm asked as a legal advisor to provide a legal framework. What is the legal framework? And the legal framework is provided in particular, not just by the convention as a whole, but in particular by Article 11 of the convention, paragraphs 1 and 2. And with your indulgence, I would like to quote those paragraphs. Paragraph 1 states as follows: every party to this convention shall, insofar as possible, submit to the World Heritage Committee an inventory of property forming part of the cultural and natural heritage situated in its territory and suitable for inclusion in the list provided for in paragraph 2 of this article. This inventory shall, which shall not be considered exhaustive, shall include documentation about the location of the property in question and its significance. Paragraph 2 of Article 11 states as follows, and let me quote again. On the basis of the inventory submitted by states in accordance with paragraph 1, the committee shall establish, keep up to date, and publish under the title World Heritage List, a list of properties forming part of the cultural heritage and natural heritage as defined in Articles 1 and 2 of this convention, which it considers as having outstanding universal value in terms of such criteria, as it shall have established. An updated list shall be distributed at least every 2 years. The end of quote. Madam Chair, in addition to the texts of the convention, I feel the need to also recall that there is a long-standing interpretation of these two provisions, which was in particular contained in a document that was shared with the committee by my predecessor, Abdulkawi Yusuf, President Yusuf, in 2004. 4, in which the legal advisor at the time took the position that Articles 1 and 2 of the Convention shall be interpreted as providing states parties with, and I'm quoting, a right to have the inventory examined by the committee for possible inclusion in the World Heritage List. In other words, embedded in that provision is a right of the states parties to have their properties considered by the committee for possible inclusion. I should point out that the committee has consistently followed that interpretation of the text up to now and made a number of decisions in the past based on such an interpretation. Having said that, on the basis of this, what I would conclude on this point is that any provisions that you're considering, any guidelines that you are considering, should be careful in respecting two items that are contained in these provisions. First of all, they should not negate the authority of the committee to establish, keep up to date, and publish the World Heritage List. In other words, it shouldn't avoid the possibility for the committee to actually consider the nominations and consider the possibility whether to include them in the World Heritage List. The second aspect is that any guiding principles should not, in order to be in conformity with the convention, should not negate the right that states parties have to have their inventory examined by the committee for possible inclusion in the World Heritage List, a right which they exercise through the submission of their nomination. On the basis of this, I wouldn't have necessarily a position to take on any of the three formulations that have been proposed, insofar as you are best placed, and each of the proponents are best placed to assess to what extent these proposals are or are not negating the authority of the committee to establish the World Heritage List, or negating the right of the states parties to have their nominations considered. What is absolutely sure is that any proposal which would imply that the committee is unable to make such a determination, in other words, which would impede for the committee from considering the nomination, would probably be incompatible with Article 11, paragraph 2. I would add two last comments, if you allow me, Madam Chair. The first one is, of course, that there is the matter of the decision, the moment in which the decision is made, the first time that the nomination comes into play. But then there's, of course, what happens afterwards. If a dialogue takes place, how does this come back to the committee? How is it that the committee will be able to come to take up again the matter if it decides to entrust this matter to the dialogue? I don't see any part of any of the proposals that have been provided up to now that actually gives clarity about what happens afterwards, and that may pose problems in the future. And then, if you allow me, Madam Chair, maybe a general comment insofar as I have been following your debates this morning. As a matter of legal technique in drafting legal texts, I believe that there's something that needs to be taken into account. A procedure is composed of procedural steps. There's procedural items. There's steps in your way. You do this, and then you do that, and you do this, and then you do that. When, in my view, a good text is a text that has a specific sentence for each of the procedural steps. In other words, one sentence for one procedural step. And that sentence should identify who does the procedural step, what is the procedural step, when is the procedural step, and how the procedural step is done. If you don't have that, there might be discussions. Let's put it this way, since I see that there is something that is being mentioned here. Let's put this way, that if those elements are not contained in the text, as a legal advisor, I will not be able to provide legal advice on what the text says to answer those questions if those questions are not contained in the text, of course, if they don't say who, what, when, and how. whether, let's put, if I may say it so in those terms, my legal advice will be limited by what the text provides, of course, on that basis. I hope this helps, Madam Chair, but of course I am available to answer specific questions as may be needed.
Thank you very much. I think the time is, but I'll take a few questions as much as the, we have 7 minutes left. So let's ask questions. If you have questions, I have South Africa followed by Ethiopia.
I must say, we enjoy looking at your face, so calm, you know. So far, just keep it that way. The first part of the legal advisor's response clarified what he was requested to do. The first part. We now know that the proposals around operational guidelines, actually we are talking to the principles in the convention. And we must be careful because he's quoted 2 articles, isn't it? In the convention, not the operational guidelines. And those of us who are saying, let's consider changing operational guidelines, be reminded, be warned that probably we might be talking about the convention, not the operational guideline. And I'm not sure what is the procedure of amending the convention.
No.
I'm not a lawyer myself, but I do I can interpret. So I think that's what I want. So I'm happy with what he has clarified, and I think it's consistent with a caution that you yourself, Chairperson, presented to us, warned us to say, be careful that whatever we recommend should be consistent with what the convention and the operational guidelines are saying. I'm satisfied with the first part of the answer. The second part really is, I wish we don't discuss it. We have had it, you know, we don't discuss it. As this working group, we have a responsibility to recommend principles, right? Written in our own language. The Secretariat and the lawyers will do whatever is necessary, but we will coach them in the language that we're going to prefer, and we've been doing it with all other committees. So I don't think we want to produce a document that spells out ABC to the nest. I think it'd be unrealistic to expect us to do that. Absolutely. But what I take from what he's saying is that perhaps what Japan is saying and South Korea are saying is not too far. We can't prescribe to the World Heritage Committee, and you want us. So we should either consider what, you know, the language that is provided, which is may consider, you know, unless the committee decides otherwise. I think this is consistent with what the legal advisor is saying, and that should pave the way for us, Chairperson, to conclude what is presented before us. I don't agree with his concluding remarks on the whats and the nots. I don't think that's expected of us here to do. We are outlining principles, and I think the test will be whether our principles are in contravention to both the convention and the principle. And if they are not, other nuts and bolts are for the Secretariat to look at. Thanks.
Thank you. Ethiopia, you have the floor.
Yeah, no, you will not be surprised that I fully agree with my neighbor.
No, I won't.
So I reaffirm that I am full agreement with him. The text we are looking at is entitled Guiding Principles. Guiding Principles for the Preparation of Nominations. So we're looking at guiding principles. That's one. Two, as he said, the first part of the legal answer, the legal counsel's answer, I think is fully satisfactory for us. We have no problem. The second part is really he's delving into an area where we did not ask and where we are not in agreement among ourselves. So we don't think we should delve in there. Otherwise, we'll be here for not for one session, but for many sessions in multiple years. So let's not go there. The other issue, the most important issue is regarding whether we are impeding on the committee's prerogatives. That's what we sought the legal clarification of our friend. And he said that there should not be anything that impedes the powers of the committee to consider nominations. I don't think there's anything in the guiding principles we are setting forth that impedes. We are recommending, we are not deciding. We are saying to the committee, this is how you should do it. we think. But of course, as Japan said, you can do otherwise as well. So there's nothing in the text, for me, at least as a distant legal expert, that impedes the the prerogatives of the committee. Now it becomes a political question. It becomes rather a substantive question on what onus we place on dialogue. And here I fully agree that dialogue must be an essential component of the whole exercise when there's contestation. So we have may and may consider and requests. We try to find a middle ground, but if the legal expert or someone else can do otherwise, we are more than happy to accommodate them. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Kuwait, to be followed by the Republic of Korea. If we can do it quickly, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be quick. Madam Chair, again, I start with, agreeing with our colleague from France saying, I don't know why we are so sensitive about changing a couple words in the operation guideline where everyone, I think if we had that, we've covered, all these issues we're talking about, because then we have enough time for dialogue. Again, I'll go back to the specific paragraphs. As to Kuwait, dialogue is the most important. That's why we're here. So that's why we are supporting, Japan's amendment is dialogue. We need to emphasize on the dialogue. Second, with their amendment, we're not taking away anything from the committee. This is our second concern. Committee has the right to inscribe, not to inscribe. With the amendments being submitted by the Japan, where it says unless otherwise decided by the committee, this is to us very comfortable, where it's back to the committee to decide. So to be specific, we think we support the amendment, the original amendment by Japan, where it says unless otherwise decided by the committee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. But I now will only take questions to the legal advisor, really, because we are continuing this discussion on the substance of the paragraph. But please, if you have questions about the different options or about anything to the legal advisor, now is the time to do it. So I have Republic of Korea to be followed by Turkey and France, but I mean the time is over. It's over. So there is over.
Madam Chair, actually, my question was unanswered. So that's why I was trying to take the floor. I had a question. If the current operational guidelines allows us to nominate.
Yes, I understand, but we haven't finished. We will come back to your question. It will be answered next time, certainly. And France, you had something very quick to ask?
Well, the French and English versions are in fact divergent. There's 60 days or 6 weeks. So if at least we could agree on that. Yes, we'll deal with that. Thank you. And we'll see about the rest on Friday.
The floor to conclude to the legal advisor, and then I'll conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify that indeed I will remain available for the working group to answer any questions you may have. With regard to convention and operation guidelines, as you suggested, I will come back to that next time if you so wish. I just wanted to make sure that my purpose was not misunderstood earlier on, which I believe it was. It is that if the decision is made to establish a procedure, then the procedure should answer the questions I mentioned before. Nothing more than that. I'm not taking position on the mandate of the committee of the working group. Of course, that's not my role. Thank you very much, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you very much. I have to say that I fully agree with you. Even as I said this morning, we are not getting into details of procedures over here because we are not mandated to go that far, but this is going to happen in the future, whether we like it or not. So we are continuing this discussion on the 10th at 10 o'clock sharp. Thank you.